Mass deportations are expected to start early this week. NBC News reported yesterday that Chicago was set to be the first city targeted. But breaking tonight, NBC has learned that that operation has been postponed due to media leaks. Still, the raids are coming, and communities across this country will now be living in constant fear of the uncertain. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jose Antonio Vargas spent decades in the United States as an undocumented immigrant. 13 years ago, he publicly revealed his immigration status. Just last month, Vargas finally secured a U.S. visa. It took him 31 years to achieve legal status, but he is still not on a direct path to citizenship. Jose Antonio Vargas joins us now for a television exclusive. He is the founder and president of Define American, an organization, full disclosure, I co-founded. He's also the host of Define American with Jose Antonio Vargas and author of Dear America, Notes of an Undocumented Citizen.
Well, I know. What a story, man.
I know, right? Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So people saying, let's get in line. There's no line.
Well, I have to tell you, so when Alicia and I co-founded this organization 13 years ago, that's the #1 question I got asked. And it doesn't matter, by the way, if I was talking to Republicans in Alabama or progressives in Wisconsin. Like, they did not understand, why can't you just go fix this thing?
Right.
And you know what's interesting? Reporters themselves don't understand this. I actually think a big part of the issue, I mean, I recently found out, and I am a reporter, so I have to fact check something before I say something out loud. I recently found out that there's a DC-based news operation that reports on politics with not a single full-time immigration reporter on staff. Are you telling me that we've elected someone president twice with immigration as the central campaign issue, and all we do is think of immigration as a political issue and not as a process? Like, how does this actually work?
Yeah.
So tomorrow when the deportations happen, do people understand that you have 11 million undocumented people because immigration is not one size fits all, and immigrants are not monolith?
Speaker Mike Johnson was on Meet the Press earlier today, and he was asked about the mass deportations by Kristen Welker. And let's play for you what he had to say.
I cannot think of a better dollar-for-dollar investment than to restore the security and the safety of the country. We have dangerous illegals in the country, criminals who have already committed crimes here, violent crimes against American citizens. The best thing we can do is return those people from where they came.
That's the rhetoric, but to your point, the process in what, first of all, I will note that the data, and I mean, some of this data is from the Heritage Foundation, actually. The majority of undocumented people in this country, they are not the people who are committing crimes. It's actually American citizens who are committing crimes.
Why would they put that kind of spotlight on themselves?
Yeah, I just think it's important to put that out there on the streets.
Hey, I'm going to come here illegally and commit crimes because that's...
No, I'm going to come here illegally and in the middle of a snow in Manhattan, make sure that you have your DoorDash. I'm going to come here illegally,
there you go.
so to make sure you have strawberries in your salads and hamburgers and lettuce in your hamburgers. I'm going to come here illegally to make sure that the state of Texas, where there's 1.8 million undocumented people, half of the industry and construction in Texas are undocumented. So when the Speaker of the House says dollar-for-dollar investment, what are we actually talking about? I have a real challenge for my fellow journalists. Step up. Follow the money, right? Follow the money. Get really specific. So, as Alicia know, the whole goal of this is how do you, for us at Define American, I had one story, one really specific story, right? And I'm telling it with as much specificity and humanity as I can. And guess what? The 11 million undocumented people, and by the way, I don't think it's 11 million. If I just counted all the undocumented white people that want to buy me coffee at Starbucks at airports, I think it's way more than 11 million undocumented people. I think we don't talk about undocumented black people nearly enough. The largest...
Is it Sunday? I need to pick up a plate. Yes,
it is
black
Sunday.
People, Haitian folks from the continent of Africa,
now,
undocumented white people, like Europeans.
The fastest growing undocumented population in the country are not coming from Latin America, they're coming from Asia. The second largest undocumented population are coming from India. Have we talked to the incoming vice president about that, who's married to an Indian American woman? Why has that not come up?
Because it's not neat and it doesn't fit the narrative. And when you talk about the fact that people don't report on this because they don't think it's a policy question, they think of it as a political question. Let's be honest. For a long time, they just thought of it as a Latino political question because we have been the face of this issue for so long. I say that to you, my Filipino friend.
And I have to say, by the way, because also Alicia and I are really good friends with a woman named Cristela Alonso, who's Mexican-American, and we have kind of a Mexipino population. She was just texting me today because she was so happy about this. I'm so glad that I got this process in Mexico. Because I had to go to Mexico to follow
get a visa.
To follow this process, to get in line. I had to leave the country that I had been my home for 31 years, that I paid a lot of taxes to, because undocumented immigrants pay taxes, leave the country with no guarantee that I'll be allowed to get back. And being in Mexico, I have to say, I think we in this country owe the Mexican people a great apology. We have racialized this issue to such an extent that we think this is a Mexican border wall issue. In a country, by the way, that has what? The United States of amnesia, that doesn't even want to acknowledge the fact that all of these places, Texas, Arizona, California, I'm sorry, who did they used to belong to?
Mexico.
Yeah. That's the point. And that's the rub for a lot of folks. There is a mentality and a mindset that wants to deliberately create a vision or a visual of this issue that people can sink their teeth into and be angry about, and not appreciate everything you just said about the men and women who are actually doing the work in this country. I got into a little bit of a tiff, as I am wont to do from time to time with people. And this one guy was throwing this up in my face about where they need to go back. I said, okay, when they go back, is your son going to take his lazy ass out there and do the work?
See, Michael.
Is he going to? But my point is, who's going to do the work that you're claiming is not getting done, right? Who's going? The speaker's talking about the economic impact. Does the speaker not understand the economic impact when because of this policy tomorrow? It's not about so much of, it's about the people who are going to be deported, actually. But you know what it's also about? The chilling effect that it's going to have on people who are here legally, who get caught up in this system because they have the wrong name or they live in the wrong neighborhood.
And the reality is, you can't talk about an undocumented person without that person's relationship with all of the other people in their family.
That's right.
Right? The parents are undocumented, the kids are U.S. citizens. Right? Don't they? To me, what's been so chilling is watching some Democrats, with this Lake and Riley Act. Right? And to me,
We can put the full screen up of the Democrats who are supporting the Lake and Riley Act.
What's been fascinating to me is the message is, if you're an undocumented immigrant, you're not entitled to due process of law, right? Which is a cornerstone of American democracy, which means what? You're not human. The Speaker of the House, what did he just say? We're illegals.
Right.
That's what he just said. So now again, journalism is my church. It is my religion. I've been praying to it since I was 16 years old. So when the Speaker of the House does that, what is our job? How do news organizations, how do journalists now ask this moral question that is being asked of us? We live in a country where there's 48 million immigrants, 48 million of all status, right? Of the 11 million are undocumented of the 48 million. In the next 50 years, 88% of the population growth of the country is going to come from that 48 million people. The country is only going to get more Asian, more Latino, more Black, and more mixed race. That's not DEI. That's not diversity. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
That's why Stephen Miller's working post haste.
That's it.
Stephen, I would really love to talk to you, man.
Yes, Stephen Miller, you have an open invitation to come on the weekend.
From Jose Antonio Vargas.
Yes.